Summer in Willow Creek always started the same way. Slow mornings, trimmed hedges, and the faint smell of cut grass hanging in the air. But this year, the heat carried something new. A quiet ambition stirring in 17-year-old Tyler. A lanky boy with sun-freckled cheeks and more determination than most adults twice his age. He'd saved up enough for a second-hand mower, its red paint chipped and handle rattling with every pull. Still, to him, it wasn't just a lawnmower, it was his ticket to earning something of his own. With college dreams in the distance and only months before school expenses would start piling up, Tyler saw opportunities scattered across every yard in the neighborhood. Day by day, his little venture grew. One neighbor after another asked for his help. A quick trim here, an edging job there. A $10 job turned into 15. Soon, his weekends were booked solid, and the once-unused corner of the garage became the hub of his tiny operation. Flyers, a calendar marked with times, fuel cans neatly lined up. It wasn't just a side gig anymore. It was a real business, run with quiet pride and teenage grit. But not everyone saw it that way. On Evergreen Lane, order meant everything. Lawn heights, fence colors, mailbox placement, each had its place under the watchful eye of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. And no one watched closer than Karen Whitmore. She was the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, a woman who believed in rules above all else. Her yard looked like something out of a magazine. Roses trimmed with military precision, hedges perfectly symmetrical, and not a leaf out of place. From her porch, she'd sip iced tea and scan the streets, ensuring everyone stayed in line. When she first noticed Tyler pushing his mower across the Sullivan yard, she frowned, notebook already in hand. She watched him return a week later, then again the next morning, every pass of his mower deepening her scowl. It wasn't that the lawns looked bad, quite the opposite. It was that Tyler wasn't supposed to be doing this, at least, not according to Karen's interpretation of the community employment policy. That evening, under the golden light of sunset, Karen's hands tapped her phone screen with practiced authority. An email to the HOA board, formal, detailed, and sharp as glass. The subject line read, "Unlicensed commercial activity. Immediate attention required." The next day, Tyler found a letter taped to his garage door. It bore the HOA logo in faded blue ink. He tore it open with calloused fingers and frowned as his eyes traced each line. It accused him of violating several neighborhood bylaws, including operating an unapproved commercial enterprise within a residential zone. The wording sounded stiff, almost bureaucratic, but the message was clear. Stop mowing lawns or face penalties. For a moment, he just stood there, the letter flapping softly in the wind. The mower sat silent beside him, a streak of grass still clinging to its blade like defiance. Disappointment crept over him, then confusion. He wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't making noise late at night or blocking driveways. He was just working. His mother, Claire, returned home later that evening to find him sitting on the front steps, the letter clutched in his hands. A corporate attorney who knew her way around words sharper than any mower blade. She read the notice carefully. Her jaw tightened just slightly, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of her lips as she reached the end. By the time she looked up, the sky had darkened into violet twilight. Tyler didn't need to ask what she was thinking. He could see it in her eyes, calm, calculating, but most of all, quietly furious. From that moment, summer in Willow Creek wouldn't be remembered for lawns and lemonade. It would be remembered for what happened when one woman picked the wrong battle and went after the wrong kid. As the crickets sang and porch lights began to flicker on across the neighborhood, Claire set her phone on the table. She wasn't dialing a neighbor. She wasn't calling the HOA. She was calling someone else entirely, someone who could do much more than mow lawns. And by the next afternoon, Karen Whitmore's perfect world would start to tremble. Morning sunlight spilled across Evergreen Lane, glinting off polished mailboxes and freshly watered driveways. For most residents, it was just another serene Willow Creek morning. But for Karen Whitmore, the day began with anticipation. She sat neatly dressed at her dining table, laptop open, HOA meeting notes perfectly arranged beside her. Today, she would make sure the lawn mowing incident, was handled once and for all. Her email from the previous night had gained traction faster than she imagined. The HOA chair, a man swayed easily by dictates of order and procedure, had scheduled an emergency inspection. Karen planned to be there to witness every moment of it. After all, she had spent years building her influence within the board, ensuring her voice carried more weight than most. In her mind, Tyler's simple act of mowing a few lawns wasn't youthful ambition. It was disorder, an offense against the aesthetic legacy she believed she protected. Across the street, Tyler felt the tension long before the officials arrived. 3 HOA members appeared mid-morning, clipboard in hand, their steps careful and deliberate as they approached his home. The sound of their pens scratching against paper echoed faintly through the still air. They took photos of the garage, his mower, even the flyer pinned beside the door. It felt intrusive, almost accusatory, as if every blade of grass had become evidence against him. Claire stood by the window watching. She didn't speak, but the silence around her carried weight. Her expression was calm, though her eyes tracked every movement outside. She recognized the tone of official overreach when she saw it. Bureaucracy, she knew, often hid behind politeness, and this particular scene reeked of it. By afternoon, word had traveled fast. Some neighbors whispered their support for Tyler, saying how kind he'd been to mow their yards affordably when service companies quoted outrageous prices. Others avoided eye contact, afraid of drawing Karen's scrutiny. The small-town unity that once defined Willow Creek began to splinter, the quiet war between conformity and decency unfolding one neatly trimmed lawn at a time. Karen, however, basked in the attention. To her, this wasn't bullying, it was civic duty. She updated neighbors via the online community board, posting photographs and selectively citing HOA regulations. Her words carried that usual blend of formality and superiority, the kind that left no space for empathy. She spoke of preserving neighborhood standards, yet never once mentioned the boy whose only mistake was using his free time to work. Late that night, Claire printed the HOA's bylaws and spread them across her kitchen counter. The soft hum of the printer underscored the mood, a professional shifting into defense mode. She highlighted sections, took notes, and occasionally paused to shake her head. The supposed community employment policy Karen had cited didn't forbid residents from working small neighborhood jobs. The clause was outdated and ambiguous, meant to restrict heavy commercial traffic, not teenagers wielding mowers. By midnight, she had drafted an outline of a formal complaint, and something stronger. Not just a rebuttal, but a warning. She knew how far she could push legally without even stepping into court. Her precision at handling contracts and regulatory disputes had made her a respected figure in her field. And if Karen wanted to play by the book, Claire would make sure every word in that book turned back on her. Meanwhile, Karen had begun her next move. She called an impromptu HOA board session, inviting members to discuss disciplinary measures. Her tone in the emails grew sharper, colder, emboldened by self-righteous certainty. She didn't realize how much of her correspondence, her threats, her private complaints, were being watched, documented, and quietly collected. The following weekend, a letter addressed to the HOA board landed in their inbox. It was from Claire, polite, articulate, and devastating in its clarity. It cited clause numbers, state labor laws, and association overreach statutes that even the board's own lawyer had to reread twice. Karen's name appeared repeatedly as the catalyst in the matter, and for the first time, whispers began to circulate within the board itself. Some questioned whether she had acted beyond her authority. Others worried about liability. The same structure that had always backed her began to waver. As evening fell over Willow Creek, Karen stood at her window, watching Tyler once again mow Mrs. Sullivan's lawn with quiet diligence. The sight that once filled her with indignation now brought something else: unease. The boy was still at it, unwavering. And somewhere deep down, she began to suspect this battle wasn't going to end on her terms. The next HOA board meeting was set for Thursday night. And there, under the fluorescent lights of the clubhouse, the quiet war would finally erupt. Thursday evening arrived heavy with humidity and quiet tension. The Willow Creek clubhouse glowed beneath the parking lot lights, its glass doors reflecting the gathering of residents trickling inside. Folding chairs scraped softly against the tiled floor as neighbors settled in, murmuring about the meeting's agenda. But everyone already knew the real reason they were there: Tyler's mowing business and Karen's crusade against it. At the front, a long wooden table stretched beneath a banner reading Willow Creek Homeowners Association, monthly session. Karen sat upright, papers neatly stacked before her, a look of unbending confidence frozen on her face. Around her, a few board members whispered among themselves, some visibly uneasy, others curious to see the drama unfold. Claire entered quietly, guiding Tyler to a seat in the second row. She moved with the calm control of someone who had faced far larger rooms, with far higher stakes. Dressed in business black, her demeanor radiated authority without arrogance. She wasn't there to intimidate, merely to correct. Yet even before she spoke, Karen's jaw tightened. The meeting began like many before it, routine announcements about upcoming landscaping projects and neighborhood events. Then came the main item on the agenda: unapproved commercial activity, resident report. Karen's hand rose immediately, her movements deliberate, eyes gleaming with anticipation. The president nodded for her to speak, and she did so with precision, her tone clipped and rehearsed. She outlined the issue as she saw it: an unlicensed operation run from a residential property, potential disturbances, the degradation of neighborhood order. Her words carried rhythm and momentum, a speech she'd clearly practiced in front of her mirror more than once. When she finished, scattered nods came from 2 board members. But before the motion could move forward, the HOA president turned to Claire. "Would you like to respond?" he asked. Claire rose slowly, the faint shuffle of papers marking her composure. Her voice was calm, every sentence deliberate, her phrasing crisp yet measured. She began by acknowledging the HOA's role in maintaining standards and order, thanking the board for their service. Then, with the precision of someone who lived in the world of fine print, she shifted. She cited section after section of the bylaws, each one contradicting the supposed rule Karen relied on. The commercial activity clause, she explained, applied to ongoing enterprise-level operations, not small neighborhood services performed by residents. She pointed out that teenage labor fell under community engagement, not commercial use. Then came the clincher. She referenced a state statute explicitly protecting minors performing light neighborhood work, directly invalidating Karen's entire case. The room grew quiet except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Karen tried interjecting, but Claire didn't need to raise her voice. Every word landed like a quiet gavel strike. She revealed emails and correspondence Karen had sent, showing how they were laced with personal grievances rather than objective concerns. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. What began as an HOA matter now looked like personal harassment masked as neighborhood regulation. Tyler sat silently beside his mother, eyes wide with something between relief and disbelief. The same people who once ignored Karen's antics now looked at her differently, some embarrassed, others outright irritated. When Claire finished, she placed her papers neatly back into her folder. Then she added one final detail that silenced the room completely: a copy of a formal complaint filed with the local council's Fair Practices Office, citing HOA misuse of authority and targeted discrimination. The letterhead alone carried weight. It transformed the conversation from neighborhood gossip into a legal liability discussion. Karen's expression faltered for the first time. Her confidence cracked, replaced by a flicker of panic. She began defending herself, voice trembling slightly, explaining how she'd only tried to enforce community integrity. But each word only tightened the noose around her argument. The board's attorney, who had been quietly taking notes in the corner, spoke up to confirm Claire's interpretation was correct. The HOA president finally cleared his throat. His decision was brief. No violation had occurred. Tyler was free to continue his lawn mowing service. Moreover, the board would review Karen's conduct at a closed session due to potential breaches of ethical protocol. As chairs shuffled and neighbors dispersed, whispers filled the air. Some sympathetic, others barely masking satisfaction. Outside, the night air carried a quiet triumph. Tyler loaded his mower into the truck bed beside his mother, the engine humming softly as he looked back at the glowing clubhouse. Karen lingered inside, gathering her papers with trembling hands, the sound of muted laughter echoing faintly around her. Control, her lifelong currency, had begun slipping through her fingers. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't over. Not yet, because tomorrow the fallout would truly begin. The morning after the HOA meeting dawned unusually still. The air in Willow Creek felt heavy, as though the perfect order Karen had fought so hard to maintain had cracked under invisible pressure. Her curtains stayed closed longer than usual, the front porch, once her throne of judgment, empty. Across the street, life resumed as normal. Lawnmowers buzzed softly, sprinklers hissed, and Tyler's laughter carried faintly down the lane. But within Karen's house, the silence was deafening. She paced from window to window, phone in hand, refreshing her inbox again and again. No supportive replies, no confirmations from her fellow board members, just an eerie absence of validation. The world that once revolved around her authority now spun without her. By mid-morning, the HOA had released a statement to residents. It was brief, almost cold in tone, acknowledging an internal review of procedural conduct and appointment of an interim compliance chair. That title, previously hers, now belonged to someone else. For the first time in years, Karen was no longer the enforcer. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the glossy HOA badge she had worn with pride at every meeting. It rested now beside a glass of untouched water, reflecting the morning light with faint cruelty. Her phone finally buzzed. A message from the HOA president. A meeting had been scheduled for that evening to discuss performance and conduct concerns. She already knew what it meant. Meanwhile, life on Evergreen Lane began to bloom again. Tyler's schedule filled with new requests, half encouragement, half quiet defiance from neighbors eager to support him. The same people who once avoided confrontation with Karen now waved to him from their porches. Kids delivered flyers for free, older residents tipped him double. The sound of his mower became a symbol, a small hum of resistance against the pettiness that had ruled their neighborhood. Claire watched it all with quiet satisfaction, though she kept her distance from the celebration. Her victory wasn't about humiliation, but balance. She had seen too many people like Karen, those who used rules to disguise control. What mattered most to her was showing her son that standing his ground, even respectfully, had power. By afternoon, Karen ventured outside, unable to stand the stillness of her confinement. The moment she stepped onto her porch, whispers rippled through the block. A few avoided her eye, others didn't bother hiding their disdain. For someone who once commanded admiration through fear, she now faced the sting of isolation. Her mailbox was filled with folded letters from the HOA, official notices stamped in neutral ink. One outlined the terms of her removal as compliance chair. Another requested a statement for the ethics review regarding her misuse of authority. Then came the worst, an attached report citing a recorded complaint about her behavior during a private homeowner dispute months earlier. It wasn't just this incident they were exploring, it was everything. Every warning, every overstep, every threat disguised as policy. She sank into the porch chair, staring out at the pristine lawns she had policed for years. The perfection now mocked her, a mirror of what she had lost. Every trimmed edge and manicured hedge reminded her of how quickly control could erode when pushed too far. That evening's meeting was brutal. The board no longer spoke to her with courtesy. They read through evidence meticulously, her emails, her language, her pattern of targeting residents. One accusation led to another until the scene began to blur. Karen tried defending herself, insisting her intentions had always been for the community's benefit. But her once commanding tone had dulled into desperation. When it was over, she left the building through a side door, eyes red from exhaustion and humiliation. Her official termination notice would arrive the next morning, but everyone already knew. Word spread faster than any memo could stop it. By nightfall, she was no longer Director Whitmore. She was simply Karen, the woman who lost everything to her need for control. Across the street, Tyler was finishing one last job before heading home. The hum of his mower drifted softly over the darkening lawns. In the glow of the streetlights, his mother watched from the porch, sipping tea, calm as the world quietly balanced itself again. Inside her home, Karen sat in darkness. Her phone vibrated one last time, the HOA statement now public. It confirmed the removal of an official due to inappropriate conduct and violation of ethical standards. She didn't open it. She only stared at the faint reflection of her face in the screen, realizing too late that order built on fear always collapses from within. Outside, Evergreen Lane shimmered under the warm gold of porch lights, the distant rumble of Tyler's mower marking the end of a long battle. Yet somewhere in that sound was more than triumph, it was renewal. And though Karen would retreat from public sight, her story wasn't finished. Because even humiliation can breed one last, desperate act. A week passed since the HOA's decision, and Willow Creek had started to breathe again. Without Karen's shadow stretching across every lawn, the neighborhood regained a quiet harmony it hadn't known in years. Children played on driveways, flower beds bloomed unchecked by judgment, and Tyler's mower was now a familiar, welcomed sound every weekend. But beneath that calm surface, a restless storm brewed inside one house, the one with the perfect roses and the silent phone. Karen still woke up before dawn, her habits refusing to release her. She made her bed like clockwork, trimmed her hedges, and read through old HOA notes she no longer had authority to enforce. Every morning, she promised herself she would let go. Every afternoon, she found herself consumed by frustration. Something inside her couldn't accept the humiliation. The loss of her title hurt most, not because of the power itself, but because for Karen, control had been identity. Without it, she felt empty, forgotten. Late one night, she scrolled through her emails, hovering over every message that mentioned her name. She found anonymous comments from neighbors, chatter about Tyler's success, praise for Claire's composure. Each word was another cut, another confirmation that she had been replaced in importance. Anger, once tidy and controlled, began twisting into something reckless. By midnight, Karen was outside again. She walked the neighborhood path in silence, her flashlight casting narrow beams over manicured lawns. Her steps took her toward Tyler's garage, where his mower and flyers waited neatly by the door. She stopped there for a long time, the faint scent of gasoline and grass in the air. Then she did something she hadn't planned. She lifted one of the flyers, crumpled it, and tucked it into her pocket. It wasn't vandalism or revenge. It was confusion, a symbol of all that had slipped away from her. Still, for the first time since her fall, she realized how small this rivalry truly was. Back at her kitchen table, she pulled the flyer out again. Tyler's handwriting, simple and earnest, stared back at her. Reliable lawn care, neighborhood-friendly rates. The words looked innocent, not defiant. It struck her how harmless his business had been from the start. That single realization, quiet and piercing, drained the last of her anger. Meanwhile, the next morning brought an unexpected message to Tyler's inbox. It was short and signed, but unmistakably written by Karen. It contained only a few sentences, an apology, clumsy yet genuine. She admitted she had gone too far, that her need for order had clouded her judgment. She wished him luck in his work and said she'd prefer to stay out of any more neighborhood matters. Tyler showed it to his mother. Claire read it without comment, her face unreadable for a moment, then softened slightly. It wasn't forgiveness that mattered now, it was closure. And in its own awkward way, Karen had given them that. As the leaves began to fade into early autumn, the neighborhood entered a new rhythm. Tyler expanded his business beyond Evergreen Lane, hiring 2 friends and repainting his old mower bright green. The hum of lawn care became the soundtrack of renewal across Willow Creek. Karen, on the other hand, began volunteering at the local library. It started small, organizing shelves, managing the community bulletin. No titles, no authority, just quiet order. She found comfort in routine without domination, a peace she hadn't felt in years. The people there didn't ask about her past, and she didn't offer it. One weekend, as Tyler passed by her house on his route, Karen was outside tending her flowers. She didn't frown or turn away. She simply nodded, a restrained but genuine acknowledgement. Tyler nodded back, and in that silent exchange, the story that had fueled months of tension ended not with vengeance, but understanding. The summer that began with noise and conflict faded into a soft calm. Willow Creek was greener, freer, a little messier, but happier. The lawns didn't all look perfect anymore, yet somehow they felt alive. And for the first time in her life, Karen looked out over her own yard, not as a ruler surveying her domain, but as a neighbor. The hum of Tyler's mower faded down the street, and she smiled faintly. Control had left her life. In its place, peace had quietly moved in.